I got home from the gym this afternoon and I opened up a browser and I looked at this comment from Sir Thanks a Lot. And I punched it into Chat GPT and it ran with it. It really liked this comment to the nth degree. I liked it so much that I'm making an entire video around it. And the reason for it is because more and more of the proletariat has to wake up. They've been plugged into the machine for so long that they believe that this is normal. And I'm always going to start with the food. The overall food quality for us in the last 3 to 4 years has diminished so badly that restaurants and grocery stores should be ashamed of themselves for selling us such low quality products at such a ridiculously high price. They're shameless, just like the rest of the corporations. They've set up our lives to be so that we have to pay a tax to exist. There's a poverty tax in this country, and it's been that way for a long time. But the food is the perfect example. It gets worse and worse, it costs more, and we've gotten to the point where throwing two fistfuls of dirt in your mouth tastes like ramen, the bottom level food. Let's get into my monologue. The economy isn't some random chaotic system. It's a rigged toll booth designed to keep you paying at every stage of your life. You work harder but never get ahead because the game is set up to make sure you never have enough to escape. Meanwhile, the rich skip the tolls completely, hoarding wealth, dodging taxes, and watching from their mansions, while you struggle to survive. And the worst part is they convince you that this is normal. We're all working at McDonald's, getting that Mc paycheck every week, and getting a Happy Meal toy as a motivation to continue the grind. But it's not just McDonald's. You guys are driving for Amazon. You guys are working inside of an Amazon warehouse. You guys are serving food. You guys are the end. There is no end to how many minimum wage jobs there are in a society that prides itself on success. But most people aren't going to run a successful business. A company doesn't want to pay you enough money so that you can be competition to them. They want to make certain that you can come back to the wage cage. They don't want you running the next Microsoft or Google or Amazon. You notice how all these corporations don't really have competitors? And it's for one simple reason: no one can compete with them. There isn't going to be some tech genius that's suddenly going to find the formula that will break the code to building a bigger, better Amazon. They ensure that their monopolies stay powerful, that the corporations don't have to fight other corporations. The corporate wars are never going to start because they those wars end way before those places have a chance to compete. But we down here at the bottom, the proletariat, are constantly competing against each other for everything, for better opportunities in school, work, and housing. We're always fighting each other because while we fight each other, the rich just look at us and laugh. They truly just they don't understand why we keep going back to work other than, unfortunately, we need housing and food. But if it were up to the rich, they would throw fish heads in our wage cage and tell us to accept this as the new normal. Because we're constantly accepting things that are the new normal. Smaller food in the grocery store, higher prices at the gas pump, $10 eggs. And remember, none of these things ever go in the opposite direction. My rent in this side of this apartment has gone from $500 to nearly quadrupling since I've lived here. Have wages kept up with that? Absolutely not. It's intentional. Somehow they expect you to find more hours to work during the week for minimum wage rather than increasing the amount of money that you pay to people I feel like they're constantly trying to find ways of decreasing it by offering less benefits, by offering a more toxic work environment, and keeping you fearful that Susie Rottencrotch might take your job. I don't know why this is, why we normalized such a beastly system, but that's the way it exists. And that's the way it will continue to exist unless the players inside the wage cage decide that, you know what, I'm not going to allow them to normalize my smelling my own farts and calling it food. That's how toxic this world is. And of course, if you disagree, you complain, or you whine about it, it's because you're lazy and you want everything for free. If there's one thing I've noticed about ultra conservative rich people is they can't stand it when any poor person gets anything for free. Like it really, really bothers them. But when it comes to too big to fail, the corporations love welfare. Corporate welfare for them, nothing for Johnny Sixpack, who doesn't have a pot to piss in. All right, talking point number one. You pay to exist. Rent, food, transportation, healthcare, and education all have built in tolls that make survival expensive. What better way to ensure that a person stays loyal to the corporations and continues to work for them by making certain that they stayed indentured servants to their student loans for the rest of their lives, like myself? What did I get out of my education? You have 4 college degrees. You've never gotten paid a thin dime for that education, but it's a required, um, it's a necessary evil in order to be able to get your foot inside any door. Unless you want to spend your life working at McDonald's, your whole, for the rest of your existence, or any other job that's hourly, you have to go to school. But even though you take on that costly expense, that lifelong expense, that they never really expect you to pay back your student loans. I hate to break it to you guys, but when you do that to people and they and you can't get rid of them in any conceivable way. Why can billionaires file for bankruptcy, but someone who's working in retail right now with a 4-year degree and no way to repay that education? No conceivable way. You're never going to pay back your student loans while you're making minimum wage. And I remember looking at those graphs when I was in college about how much money you were supposed to make with a college degree as opposed to without one. I think that's evened out. I don't think there's much difference between a college dropout working in retail and someone that finished school and might even have a master's degree, and still evil corp would demand the experience that's impossible to get. Again, a vicious cycle of tolls keeping you in trapped in a system that was never designed for human beings. I don't understand why this country doesn't have universal basic health care, universal housing, universal food, all basic human rights. No, everything is locked behind a paywall. You want rent? You better work your rear end off in order to get a sleazy, trashy, roach infested hellhole like me. You want transportation? You want a promobile that isn't going to explode into a mushroom cloud while you race to get to work because you're late again because you were working late at your other job? Not possible. Everything is about survival for poor people. And it's hard to live in that mindset all the time. I don't even dream about going on vacations anymore. I don't dream or hope to meet anyone anymore. I've lived a tough life as part of the proletariat, completely alone. Because isolation is good for the soul. Because the last thing corporations want is for like minded people to find each other and start thinking the thoughts that they don't want you thinking. They need you to stay plugged into the system. Hopeless, despair, depression are all part of the stew of the corporation. It's the stuff they feed you every day with corporate propaganda, with stupid expressions like we're all family here, or teamwork makes the dream work. Oh my god, if I ever have to hear that again, I'm probably going to soil myself because it's something that you constantly hear when you work at the bottom, that everyone matters. But you know that the reality is there's only one person that truly matters at any corporation. That's the CEO. Everyone else is expendable. Don't believe me? Just remember back a few years when we were all afraid of something and essential workers were disposed of because they couldn't stay home. They gave you the label of essential, but isn't everyone that works essential? I would say not. But it's a great way of getting regular people to sacrifice. The heroes, which quickly turn into zeros when they're no longer breathing. Talking point number 2. You work harder, but your paycheck only covers the tolls, leaving you just enough to come back and work again next month. Next month, I'm talking about the next minute, the next second, the next hour. It's not about that. When I worked at Walmart, it was in the last 6 months that I worked there that Walmart realized that there was another way to make money off of their workers, off of their pathetic, disgusting, unappreciated workers. And that was understanding that they were so poor that they would take loans from the corporation, and every time you took a loan against your own wages, they would charge you $6. And I didn't know a single person that I worked with at that time that wasn't having to take out payday loans from your own wages. It was one of the stupidest, most sinister thing to do. You know what you pay your workers. You know what it costs to live. And you know that your workers need money and they need it now. Why not make money off of their suffering? That's what all corporations do. Because the tolls are not, we can't pay all of them. I don't know how many times I've run out of money and I've had to pawn some of my stuff. I mean, I think it was just in December that I had to pawn my iPad because I ran out of money. And it's not like I spend money on lots of luxury items. I'm not buying caviar and lobster and eating that for dinner. In fact, for the last few days, I've decided that I'm not going to buy food. I'm just going to eat whatever I can, whatever snacks I have, because food's way too expensive. And pooping out your own money, well, I'm not okay with that. I don't want to buy overpriced food. And maybe this is the way that it starts. We say no to expensive food because it's the one thing that we all have to buy. But it's big business. Walmart didn't become the world's largest retailer by selling luxury cars. No. They got that way because they know that poor people spend on poor people things. So if all your customers are poor, you have a monopoly over food because they offer the lowest prices on the lowest quality food. I used to have a supervisor who told me that he would not buy the company brand because it was so gross. And I agree. I try never to shop at that store. If there's an alternative to it, I'd prefer to shop at the Kroger's across the street. Hell, I was even at the 99-cent store yesterday. You guys saw me pick up that sign in the parking lot for the homeless guy asking for money. But I digress. Let's get into my next talking point. The dream of saving up, buying a home, or retiring comfortably, that's been turned into a luxury, not a right. Working until the bitter end is the reality for most of us. It's my retirement plan is to work until I can't work anymore and have someone run over and try to restart my heart after I drop just so they can maybe get another 5 to 10 years out of me. But the dream of home ownership, of a lot of things, of vacations. I keep bringing up vacations because they used to be something that everyone did. Suddenly, no one has any money. And it's not limited to people who are making minimum wage. I've noticed that the higher wage earners, the 100,000, the six-figure people, even they're starting to feel like they're going to have to tighten their belt. Because when fast food costs $20 for a meal, and let's say you're still making $40 to $50 an hour, but fast food costs $20 for one meal. That means that two you're still working an hour for two meals. Now imagine being the person at the true bottom, a $7.25 federal minimum wage worker. Imagine how you feel about that same fast food. I've said this 100 times, but McDonald's has priced itself out of its own customers. That food was supposed to be super low quality so that it could feed the workers that work there. But when the workers that work there can no longer afford the food, it just really, really gets to me to think of the people working at Kroger's right now. They can't afford to eat. When I walk past the deli counter and I look at that 70 or 80-year-old woman that just gave me my chicken salad, and she just took one look at me and it's like looked at a much younger girl and said, "Can you help this customer, please? I'm too busy." And I'm like, "Lady, what went wrong in your life so that you're 80 years old and you're still working at Kroger's in the deli?" Because the deli's I would say it's the one of the toughest places to hire people for. When I worked at Kroger's, only the truly desperate people worked in the deli because it's a gross job, it's a hard job, it's a thankless job. No one wanted to work in the deli. It was, I mean, you'd have people who'd come in that morning and within a couple hours they were gone. It's way too much work for what you get paid. And more often than not, the deli girl is usually a single mom that has to work. And those are when you think about people who the corporations are looking for, the corporations never look for workers who are well off. And and this is actually something that Kroger's back a few years ago launched an ad campaign thinking that middle class Americans would work inside of their stores. It was a colossal fail to think, oh, they are, and this was the mentality. They're already our customers. Maybe they would like to work here. No middle class human being is going to work inside of a Kroger's, regardless of the job. And I remember at that time I was still talking to the produce manager that was making. She was making a lot of money at $20 an hour because she'd worked there for years. Like, and the sad part is that when we started talking, she'd worked for Kroger's almost her entire adult life. And the irony was that we had somehow lived close to each other throughout our entire lives. And she'd worked at the store near my house several times. And I never noticed her. And that was something that we talked about. And one of the last few times that I ever saw her before she decided that she needed to leave the store because she couldn't handle it anymore. All right, our final talking point. The rich don't pay the tolls, you do. While you struggle to pay bills, the ultra rich get loopholes, tax breaks, and free money from the government. Billionaires hoard wealth while regular people are told to budget better or work harder. All of that budget better thing. My boss to this day tells me about how I need to budget my money better in order to live a better life. Every time I complain that I don't make enough money, he just looks at me and says, "Get a roommate." And I'm like, getting a roommate, getting married, shacking up with people you don't like is not the answer. because inevitably, the closer you get to people that you don't know, the more you rub each other the wrong way. In fact, I was just listening to that when I was at the salon earlier today. The girl that owns the place, her boyfriend moved in with some people he found on like a roommate finder thing. They can't stand each other, but they can't afford to break the lease either, because when you break the lease, they usually charge you what's remaining on the lease, which is, again, the whole way that they rent apartments in this country is designed to only benefit the wealthy owner. I don't understand why they have so many rights, like the ability to kick you out within weeks of not being able to pay your rent, of their being able to come into your house to randomly inspect it, to the way that you get admitted into an apartment. If you ever have an eviction while you're renting an apartment, chances are you're not going to rent an apartment again for at least the next 10 years. Why? It's a punishment for costing them the inconvenience of kicking you out and finding a new tenant. It is truly a disgusting system which forces people who do have evictions because they lose their jobs into living in motel rooms or living in their cars. Anyhow, that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.